Hello, and welcome back to Felony Spectator. Today, we are doing another missing persons case. Last week, we talked about a missing marathon runner in Alaska. Today, we're talking about an unusual case of a missing couple in Australia. This happened in March of 2020, so not long ago, but there are a lot of strange circumstances surrounding their disappearance. I hope I'm able to give you an update soon on this because I think everybody really wants answers, including myself. Russell Hill was a 74-year-old who was married to a 50-year-old named Robyn Hill. Russell was a former logger but was retired. His logging job made it so he was quite familiar with the bushlands of Australia. He was known to be quite the outdoorsman, and going camping was one of his favorite things to do. He was also recently into drones and was part of a high-frequency radio club. Russell had a longtime friend named Carol Clay, and it's rumored that they used to be high school sweethearts. They had remained friends for upwards of 50 years. Carol was even in attendance at Russell and Robyn's wedding many years earlier. Carol was a divorced mother of 3 with grandchildren that she adored. She was mostly known for her work at the Country Women's Association as president and was really active in her community. Her close friends would say that she had a huge heart, was really down to earth, and just really kind. They would also describe her as someone who was more of a glamour queen. She liked to dress well, wear makeup, and always wore jewelry. It's said she never went anywhere without her lippy. Lipstick, for those who don't know what lippy is. Lots of her friends were really quite surprised that she even ventured out into the bushland at all, because she was always so well dressed and always so glamorous. She just didn't seem like the type of person who would go camping. But apparently she was. Even though Carol was a well-dressed lady, she would actually hop into Russell's logging truck back when he was still working and go on to trips with him. So it was not uncommon for Carol to leave her comfort zone and rough it, so to speak. On March 19th, 2020, Russell left home to go on one of his camping trips. He had gone camping a week prior, and it said that he actually really enjoyed camping alone. So he would tell his wife, Robyn, that he would be going camping for about a week and would be leaving the camp around the 26th to return home. Now, Robyn was under the impression that Russell was actually camping alone again. But this time he had actually picked up Carol, who was going to join him on this camping trip. Despite Russell and Carol's close relationship, both of them loved their families very much and had good independent lives away from each other. Carol had been married and has kids of her own and loved her growing family. Russell, too, loved his wife Robyn. But their biggest secret was that they were more than just friends. They were actually in a romantic relationship that some would say had been going on for quite some time and possibly since high school. So perhaps Russell and Carol had thought that they had this secret, but it wasn't much of a secret because anyone who saw them together knew that it wasn't just friendship. It's even said by Russell's close friend Robyn that Robyn knew too, and it had been going on for over 20 years. He assumed that she had just learned to live with it. Why did Russell and Carol keep this secret for so long? Why not just be together? And I can't really answer that, but I can only assume that their affair had just gone so long that they were just comfortable with the arrangement. Carol, being someone concerned with her outward appearance, probably didn't want people to know that she was capable of something so frowned upon, like an affair with a married man. In fact, the Women's Association that she worked so hard for and adored had removed her name after learning of the affair, as they didn't want to be associated with Carol anymore after that. Russell's radio club friends also weren't thrilled with what was happening. I guess when Robyn wasn't around, Russell and Carol didn't hide their romance very well, and it was very apparent that they were together. The boys in the club just didn't want their wives to think that this was normal for the club. The guys would go on camping trips together all the time, and they didn't want their wives to worry. It just wasn't a good representation of the club. They all really liked Russell, they just didn't approve of the affair. On this particular camping trip in March, Russell and Carol traveled through Lacola and spent one night at a place called Howitt High Plains before moving on to Dargo River in Gippsland's Wanangata Valley. The Wanangata Valley is known to be pretty dense bushland. It's between two popular ski resorts, but it's not unheard of for people to go hiking or camping here in the summer months. It's also pretty isolated and pretty rough, so only experienced campers go here. You definitely need a 4x4, and in the winter it was completely closed because it's too dangerous for people to travel. You also don't have cell service in the area either, so unless you have a high-frequency radio, you really have no way to call for help. Russell was familiar with a path called the Zika Spur Track in the Wanangata Valley, which he had been involved with building while working as a logger earlier. In fact, it's said that Russell actually came to the region 2 other times in the same month. If you're from Australia, you probably have heard of Victorian High Country and places Russell camped. Zika Spur, King Billy, Dargo. He was very familiar with this region. Earlier in February, Russell and Carol had traveled through high country and camped in Pikes Flats, about 60 kilometers from Wanangata Valley. On the night of March 20th, with Carol by his side, Russell would have a brief conversation on his radio with his radio club friends. But it was said he was having some troubles with the radio, and it was getting dark, so he couldn't talk for long. Around 6 p.m. each night, the club gets together and they chat on their radios. They talk about hunting, camping, fishing, all sorts of outdoor stuff. And they would use their radios as well if they were out of cell phone range. So if anyone was camping, it was their way for them to check in and update the club with what was going on. Russell had spoken to Robyn during the club's call that evening, just like any other night. But that would be the last radio chat that Russell ever joined. After 2 or 3 nights of not hearing from Russell, Robyn got concerned. He knew he was out in the bush, and it was very rare that Russell missed a radio club call. So Robyn would tell Russell's wife, Robyn, that perhaps they should go to the police because this was very out of character. Now, police were able to find the campsite pretty quickly because on the 21st, a hiker had found their campsite. This hiker would take a photo of the site before bringing it to police a few days later. Unfortunately, the reason he brought the photo to the police was because the site was completely burned up and seemed very suspicious. The tent was gone, the sitting area was gone, and the flames also went up the side of Russell's Toyota Land Cruiser. If you look closely at the photo, you can clearly see the majority of the fire was the main campsite area, but there was no Russell or Carol. It almost appeared as though the tent could have been lit on fire while the couple was sleeping, but no charred remains were found. Cadaver dogs were also not able to find a single trace of Russell or Carol. This means that sometime between the radio call on the 20th and the following day when the burnt campsite was found, there was about an 18-hour window where Russell and Carol could have vanished. Not only was Russell and Carol missing, so was their sleeping bags. Forensics would explain that they usually can find trace evidence of items that burn. For a sleeping bag, that could be zippers, but there was also no trace of zippers, fibers, or anything. It's also suggested that their outdoor toilet they had set up wasn't used at all. This could mean something happened to them right after Russell was on his radio club call, because surely they'd need to use the toilet at some point in the night. Fire Forensic tried to recreate the fire to see if they could ignite tent fibers or ropes accidentally, but the items they tested just would sort of smolder without actually catching fire, and then it would just extinguish. The fire that took the campsite in this situation was big and hot, which forensics weren't able to recreate. It's possible an accelerant was used, but nothing has been proven or confirmed. And you can see in the photo there was a drum inside the fire area, which is very odd. When Russell's friend Robbie saw the photo of the burnt campsite, he knew right away it wasn't right. Russell would never light a fire near the tent or the vehicle. Russell just knew better. It also looked like the chairs and the camping equipment was just thrown in the tent or thrown towards the tent. Robbie would mention that Russell liked to set up his site differently, and he was a person of routine, and there was no way it would look so compact and haphazard. He also wouldn't have gas tanks or items nearby the tent that were flammable, especially that drum that was found inside the tent. The rest of Russell and Carol's stuff was still locked up in the truck. Their wallets were found on the floor of the passenger side of the truck, and all their cards were sort of thrown around. Searchers found it odd that the truck was even locked because out in the bush, people just didn't lock their vehicles. Searchers also said that if they had wandered off, it would be nearly impossible to walk out of the bush without supplies. So it just didn't seem realistic for anyone to do that. However, crime editor Adam Shand is not convinced that the couple are dead. He believes that they locked the truck, took the main set of keys, their drone, cell phones, and left. With that said, since their disappearance, neither of them have even tried to access their bank accounts. Carol's car was still parked at her home, and she had just purchased her house and settled in just 7 days before going camping. Her kids would say she was happy in her new home and she would never take off. Police also looked at their banking history, including purchases, and nothing indicates that they were getting ready to run off. There is speculation that perhaps Russell saw something or flew over something with his drone that he shouldn't have, and perhaps it put them in danger. And this drone would be of special interest to police, but it hasn't turned up. This theory isn't totally off base either, because back in 2008, a hiker by the name of Warren Meyer was killed after he stumbled upon a grow operation. Now, police haven't found any grow sites near where Russell and Carol were staying, but that doesn't mean that they didn't see something or fly over something that angered someone. On March 11th, a few weeks before they went missing, Russell had told a friend he was going to travel the King Billy track, which is between Onondaga and Mount Buller. And this was a bit surprising because Russell and Robbie Ashlyn, his friend from the radio club, had been down the track a year earlier and encountered a bushman nicknamed the Button Man. The Button Man is someone who is a bit of an introvert, likes to spend weeks alone camping, and is named the Button Man because he carves buttons out of deer antlers. The Button Man had apparently been quite agitated when they came across him, and he also let Russell and Robbie know never to come back. Now, some people in the community don't see the Button Man as a threat. In fact, he's quite friendly to locals in Mansfield, which is the nearest town to Watangata Valley. He does look disheveled with torn clothes at times, but he's usually pleasant. But because of his threatening nature towards Russell and Robbie, there's speculation that maybe the Button Man knows something more. The Button Man has threatened others as well, and he is somewhat of a legend in the area. Police say they have talked to him and they've cleared him, but apparently they learned things as well that they have not shared. Another theory is that perhaps they were accidentally killed by illegal poachers in the area who panicked and lit their campsite on fire and took their bodies to dispose of elsewhere. Allegedly, there was a shocking amount of dead deer in the area where they were camping as well. It's said that every 200 to 300 meters, there was a carcass. And in fact, a lot of these carcasses were headless stags. It was also later learned that a neon green hunting bow was also found near the burnt campsite as well, by the hiker who took the photo of the campsite. Another one of Robbie's friends had experienced something eerie in the region when he was camping. He set up camp, and as he was sitting by his fire, he saw someone standing at the edge of the light just watching. He would stand up and move to his vehicle, and this person just sort of walked back into the trees and was gone. Russell's friend had no idea how long this person was stalking him or why. There have been a few other people who have gone missing in the region. One man completely vanished on a solo camping trip, and another man disappeared from bed while camping with his wife. She woke up at 5:30 a.m. to find him completely gone. That is just 2 examples, but there are others who were hiking or hunting in the area that have since disappeared. Locals have said that there is a growing population of wild dogs in the backcountry, and this is alarming because the dogs could have stalked and attacked Russell and Carol. This still wouldn't answer how the drone is missing, why the campsites were burned, but it could mean, however, that their bodies could have been gone because dogs destroyed the evidence of their remains. During the 60 Minutes Australia episode that featured Russell and Carol, it said that there had been one witness who came forward who was apparently spraying blackberries nearby and claims that he saw Russell and Carol the Friday before they went missing. He said he saw them flying their drone, and Russell had actually flown it right over his campsite, which he thought was disrespectful. But he didn't mention confronting them about it. The show didn't go into any other details than that, but I'm curious to know why someone was spraying blackberries deep in the bush. Wouldn't wild blackberries be pesticide-free or free of sprays? Are people really going deep into the bush and spraying blackberries to harvest them? Maybe if someone from Australia can answer that for me, because that seems very puzzling. Since the disappearance, investigators have been able to identify most people who were in the area the same time Carol and Russell were there. They were even able to track cell phone data to upwards of 200 people, except for one, the owner of a white dual cab ute. Now, they're not saying the owner of the ute is responsible, but they definitely want to speak with them in case they have seen anything unusual. This past March of 2021, nearly a year later, someone handed in an item of interest. Police haven't verified what that item was, though. I have read some news reports that say it was a drone, but unfortunately not Russell's drone. And the latest update was April 2021, where they would imply that they uncovered evidence that led them to Mount Hotham, which is 100 kilometers away from Wanangata Valley. Here, they found 2 shovels located in the bush, and witnesses also saw police carrying a bag of evidence out of the bush as well. What was uncovered is still being assessed, and they haven't actually released anything to the public. Police would then go back to the campsite area and search one more time before calling off the investigation. Investigators have put a pause on their search efforts because it's winter there and it's just not easily accessible or safe. They are implying, though, that they're very close to cracking the case. My thoughts? I find this case somewhat baffling. If we take a look at some of the theories, killed by hunters or drug cartel or whoever grows crops, why would they take the bodies away? Why not just burn them with their belongings? Why would you go to the extent of removing their bodies and taking them 100 kilometers away? Police haven't released if they found any drag marks or footprints or tire tracks. And the couple was also in their 70s, so not intimidating or scary. I just don't know why anyone would remove the bodies. With that said, I also don't think they ran off to start a new life either. There would be more sightings, and Carol's family just know how much she adored her growing family. And Russell loved his wife too and his radio club, and he also had a good amount of money. He was living very comfortably. At the age of 70, why would you start fresh? Just be with Carol if that's what you wanted. I couldn't find anything on Robyn. She's been pretty silent, but she was quoted saying, quote, "I just want them found one way or the other, and then he can face the music if he's still alive," end quote. She also mentioned that he hasn't touched their money, so she believes that he won't be found at this point. She also claimed that she had no idea the police were treating it as a homicide investigation, and she didn't have anything further to say. I really wish we knew what was found with the shovels and what evidence was brought to the police to Mount Hotham. If anyone from Australia knows, please share. What do you guys think? What happened to Russell and Carol? Was this illegal hunters who panicked, or did they run away together? That's it for today. Thanks again for joining me here at Felony Spectator. Please hit subscribe, and we'll see you again next week.